All right, everyone. Welcome to What's Growing On. We're so happy to join us, and we apologize for the last minute reschedule. We both had some illnesses in the family that popped up on Monday, but everyone is happy and well, and we're all good to go. So again, thanks for joining us. And today we're going to be talking about, this is a special episode because we actually had a couple of viewers request this episode and had some questions about accessible gardening. And when we talk about accessible gardening, we're talking about gardening for everybody. People who may have a hard time bending over in the garden, people who may have not a whole lot of green space, who live in, apartments or condos that don't really have the opportunity to actually have a yard. So we're talking about anybody and everybody who wants to garden, and we want to make sure that y'all have the knowledge and the tools to garden where you want to and when you want to. So again, I am joined as always by Terrence with Victory Teaching Farm down here in Mobile. And she's going to be telling us all about different things that can help us with our gardening today. And of course, I'm going to be putting all of the slides you see into the Facebook comment section. So we are looking forward to a great episode today. And again, Terrence, thanks again for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Love to see you as always.
Thanks for having me.
And there are so many products and methods that can make gardening accessible. Let's start with some of your favorites. What are some of your favorite easy gardening tools?
Okay, so you mentioned people having a hard time bending over and things like that. This particular garden seat is fantastic because it can serve as a seat, or it can serve as a kneeler. I know I've never been able to easily kneel on my knees. For some reason, it just hurts. And so this is absolutely great. It comes with a little carrier on the side, a pouch that you can put your tools in. So if you're table gardening, you can pull it up to a table, or if you're in a bed, you can flip it over. And these can be found at almost any garden center. So they're very easy to find. The second thing is a seed spreader. And so this I just discovered this last year. So a lot of seeds are teeny, teeny, tiny, and very difficult to pick up, especially if you're trying to plant your seeds and you're trying not to put, 10 or 12 all in the same pot. This is a fantastic little tool. And so it's adjustable. You just open the top off and put in your seeds, and then you can adjust it to the size of the seed. So if it's a teeny tiny seed, you can adjust it. That way, only one seed will come out at a time. Or you can make the hole bigger so you can have several. But it's a great thing, if somebody's got, maybe arthritis, or, even without that, some of these seeds are so tiny, they're hard to pick up. So those two are definitely two great must-buy and very, very inexpensive.
Awesome. And I want to take a note too that a lot of the stuff that we're going to see today are fairly inexpensive products that you can find. And, anybody kneeling over in the garden for long, your back gets stiff, your knees get stiff. So I think that's a great idea. And then that seed spreader is wonderful. Like you said, for people with arthritis who may not be able to pick up those tiny little seeds, it's perfect. And then we have these really cool claw gloves. Tell us about these.
I know, these are so awesome. So they're kind of crazy looking, but these are great. So they're great for when if you see the pictures, you've got the one picture where they're kind of scraping in the ground. That's great to like dig your little trenches to put your seeds in. They're a really handy tool to kind of use when you're working in the garden. Again, they're kind of funny looking, but they're great, and they're very inexpensive. And I just discovered these also within the past year. I've not yet seen them in some of the garden centers, but I feel like eventually they'll probably be commonplace right next to the regular gloves.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are just so neat. And again, people who may have hard time with arthritis or something, digging into the ground and stuff. It just makes it a whole lot easier.
Yes.
So yeah, and Teresa, right? Teresa Wright says it looks like a hawk claw thingy, and it sure does, doesn't it? It really does. It looks almost like a costume glove, but it's really cool and very useful. So yeah. Great point. All right, let's see what we have next. Let's see. Transplant hole digger. This is handy.
Yes, this is handy. So if you don't have your claw gloves, you know, I mean, this is something that we use regularly. I have one personally that we use, and they're so easy to use. I have the tall one just because it's a lot easier. You don't have to necessarily bend over, and it has a mechanism where it pulls the dirt plug out of the ground. You plop your transplant in there, and then you can release the dirt back around the plant and just kind of spread it out as you need to. But these are wonderful because it basically is a standard kind of 4-inch transplant hole. And I love this. I love this. And you can find these at your local garden centers, and they're not expensive. The taller one is a little more expensive than the handheld one, the smaller one that you see in the pot. But yes, a definite tool that makes it a lot easier when you're planting, especially for planting a lot of transplants.
Absolutely. Great tool. So, and again, we want to remind everybody to ask your questions, or if you have something that you use that makes your life a lot easier in gardening, share that with us. Put it in the comments. We'd love to hear it. And so next, we talked about the transplant hole digger. Now we're going to talk about these really cool transplant pots.
Yeah, right. So you can find these also at any local garden center, and they are biodegradable. And so basically, if you're planting your seeds, you're just going to plant directly in these little pots. And when you're ready to put them in the ground, you can just stick them directly into the ground. You don't have to try to pull your plant out or anything like that. They just go right into the ground. They're environmentally friendly, they biodegrade, they're not gonna inhibit the growth of the plant in any way, shape, or form. And it just kind of takes one step out of the process when you're transferring your seedlings to your garden.
Excellent. And I wanted to make note too that, if you're having a hard time getting to a gardening store or something to that effect to get these types of seed pots, you can always also use, we mentioned this, I think, in our last episode, the eggshells. You can use eggshells as seed starters, and then just move the eggshells straight into the ground as well. So, that's another great idea that you can have right there in your house. You may already have some eggs and stuff. So great. We actually have a couple of questions here, Taryn. Let's look at those real quick. Let me see here. We've got one from Tawana Wright, and she's asking about the transplant tool. Is it just for transplanting? And I would say if you can find another use for it, go for it. So
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I agree. If you can find another use for it in your garden, go for it. It doesn't have to be used just for that.
Right. So, and let's see, we have another one. So the whole pot goes into the ground.
Yep, the whole pot goes directly into to the ground. It will break down, and especially with it being in a more moist environment, it'll break down much quicker. And then your plant will just thrive and do its thing. So they go directly into the ground. Now the ones up in the top corner that are connected, you'd probably have to cut those to put them in the ground. But the eggshells, that's definitely another easy way to not have to worry about trying to purchase the pots, and then they move straight to the garden, straight into the dirt.
Right.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, so those are some great ideas. And then the next one is for those kind of viney plants that we have that we like to grow. There's some great easy ideas right here. Tell us about these, Taryn.
Yeah, so trellis gardening or vertical gardening is another term for it. We have a lot of our plants that naturally vine. And so if you're short on space, or if you maybe live in an apartment and only have a balcony, this is a great way to grow those vining plants. Cucumbers, tomatoes, squash, peas and beans and green beans, all of these things are vining. Pumpkins, gourds, all of these things are vining plants, and you can easily train them to vine up really any vertical surface. These are just kind of two ideas. One is something that you would make yourself out of pallets, and the other is just using your fence. But you can use your balcony railings. You can, there's a lot of, you just have to be creative with it, and just look at your surfaces and look and say, oh, you know what, I could put a pot in front of that and vine some plants up that. The other thing about vertical gardening or trellis gardening is that it helps to reduce the possibility of pests and certain diseases, because your plants aren't directly on the ground. So they spend less time in contact with moist soil, which can sometimes cause rot. And then it makes it more difficult for the pests to get to your fruit because it's vertical. And, now we've got our flying pest, of course.
Right.
But there's pests that are in the soil and that, are on the ground. It reduces the opportunity for them to eat your plants when you're doing the vertical gardening.
That's great. And I'm assuming that, when you do have the vines kind of start to grow, you just kind of weave them into whatever or twist them around, whatever you want them to grow up, and they'll just kind of follow that path.
Yep. It's called training. You can train them.
Absolutely. You can train them.
Yep.
Awesome. Great. And so now we're going to talk about, and this is, we've got a lot of pictures for this, is raised gardening. And there's some options. These are some options that if you do have green space, or if you don't have green space, but this is an option for a little bit higher up gardening, so you don't have to bend all the way over, or you can do a lot of this seeded as well. So let's look at some of these pictures and talk about these for a second.
Yeah. So as you can see, there is many different types of raised beds. We have raised beds at the farm, and it helps with management of your garden, because you're able to, kind of enclose it without, worrying about, weeds or grass or anything kind of, encroaching on it. So it kind of gives it a barrier. If you'll notice, there's 5-gallon buckets. You can buy these at your local garden centers or home stores. They're not expensive, and you can, purchase those. This is how my grandmother would plant on her balcony. She'd plant peppers and tomatoes, and so that's something, and it gets it higher up off the ground. It does reduce the amount of weed exposure, as well as pests. And it does get it up off the ground to, make it easier to tend to. Storage containers. I mean, you wouldn't think, but really, you just have to be creative and look around at the different kind of containers that you have, because if you can poke some holes in the bottom of it and fill it with dirt, then you can grow in it. The little raised table, and we actually put some like this, very similar, at the farm, actually through an AARP challenge grant that we were awarded a couple of years ago. But these are great for people who, again, may have problems bending over, or maybe in a wheelchair, or some type of, device like that. They can pull right up to it and be able to work their gardens.
Awesome. And it's funny about the gallon buckets. My grandfather was the king of gallon bucket gardening, and he found all of his buckets. He was very proud of this fact that he found all of his buckets on the side of the road. So there are numerous people tend to throw them out, and they're really, really useful. So we would definitely recommend, reusing, recycling, it can never hurt. And Tawana Wright says, these are smart ideas. My back would appreciate raised beds. Absolutely. Absolutely, Tawana. So I I completely understand. And I love the idea of the tubs too, the storage tubs. You know, a lot of us may have some old tubs that are maybe have a crack or something, and that's easily fixed with duct tape, and you can use it, you know, for a gardening, for a garden. So, and they're good and deep too. So that's really helpful.
It would be great. Those particular tubs, the storage tub containers,
Mhm.
those would be really good for potatoes.
Yes, yes.
Um,
And carrots, I would imagine too, maybe.
and
Yeah.
carrots, that's what I was going to say. Some of your
Yep.
root vegetables, carrots or rutabagas, things like that need a little bit more deep
Yep.
area to grow in. So, yep.
Absolutely. And Teresa Wright says, so true. My dad found his buckets too. And yeah, it's one of those things. I think it's a guy thing, you know. If you got a good bucket on the side of the road, you got to pull over and pick it up, you know.
Yeah, they're going to find a use for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's great. Next, we're going to be talking about like balcony and like small patio gardening. And these are some great ideas and great tips.
They are, and I'm sorry, we've got somebody who made a comment. I want to.
Oh yeah, let's see.
Donna Williams Bradford had tomatoes till the first week in December in North Alabama, and I had them planted in concrete blocks. Yes, so that is wow. You had tomatoes until the first week of December in North Alabama. That's awesome. Because, well, of course, we really didn't start getting cold until this past month anyway. So,
and now it's 80 today in Mobile. So.
Yeah. But concrete blocks, I'm glad that you added that, Donna, because concrete blocks, I lost my train of thought on it, but yeah, concrete blocks, you can buy them at your local home stores. Those are great to plant in too, because they kind of give you two separate little areas, and you can stack them on top of each other and make them as high as you want to. You can even create a raised bed out of these concrete blocks, and I've seen this done before. They just create whatever size raised bed they want using the concrete blocks, plant whatever they want in the inside of it, and then you've still got the holes in the concrete blocks to put other things in. Like if you wanted to plant flowers, marigolds would be great to do that with, because they are a deterrent for pests. But or if you wanted to put herbs around the edge of your garden.
Great idea.
Blocks, yeah, we definitely need to add those to making garden more accessible, because you can do a lot of things with those. Make them as high and as long and as big as you want to.
That's great. Great idea. Thank you, Donna. And then Teresa Wright had a quick question about will onions work in a deeper pot like the tubs?
Oh yeah, they'll work. They'll work just fine.
Excellent. Great.
Okay.
All right. So here we are with balcony gardening, and there's some great ideas on here. So tell us a little bit about this, Taryn.
Okay, yeah. So balcony gardening, we actually had a question about this one of our last episodes. They were asking about hanging planters on their railing of their balcony, and so you can see there's several different ideas on how you can garden. But if you know, depending on the size of the pot, you can buy at your local garden centers holders that fit right over, you know, the edge of your balcony. So you can see there's several different types of pots that are just hanging. This is also an opportunity to do some vertical gardening. So if you set them down on the bottom up against the rail, you can weave them in and use your railing as your vertical trellising. Also shelving, put shelving on your balcony, and that way it gives you more room and more height level for plants, makes it a little easier to get to them if you've got them on shelves. So there's a lot of great ideas on how, you know, because so many people think, well, I don't have a yard, I live in an apartment. Well, that doesn't mean you can't garden. And as you can see by these pictures, these are some pretty lush little gardens on what looks like a typical, or some of them look like a typical apartment balcony. There is a do and a don't on here though. And that is, you never want to just put your plants directly on top of your railing. Because, you know, obviously they could fall over easily and break, or, you know, worst case scenario, fall off and fall on his car, or, you know,
right.
Yeah, if you're gonna if you want them up high, really look into buying the hangers that you can get to hang them from your balcony, at the top of the railing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great ideas. I love the shelf idea. That just seems very easy and very doable. Yeah. And so then I think our last one really is just tabletop gardening. So we have several options here that look really interesting. So tell us about these, Taryn.
Right, yeah. And so this is actually from one of the first episodes that we did. It was one of the questions on, I want to grow on top of a table out on my back patio. And can you do this? And yes, you absolutely can. Any kind of table or shelf, will work. And I really love the one at the bottom. Now, this looks a little bit more custom because it looks like they've cut out holes in the table for the pots to sit down in, but it looks really pretty. So that's a little more fancier, but any table will do. A picnic table, any kind of shelf. I mean, you can tell that there's a kind of it looks like kind of a shelving unit. What you want to make sure of, though, with this is if you're using something that's like wood, you want to make sure that you've got good drainage. And if you see the pots, they've got the little small plate underneath. That way it catches the water and won't, eventually rot your table. But yeah, I mean, if you've got a tabletop, you can grow whatever you want to on it. And then the thing about the tabletops is, as opposed to with the vertical gardening, if you have cucumbers or something like that you're wanting to grow, sitting them up on top of the table, they can trail off down the side. So, you really can pretty much grow anything, just as you would in the garden, just as you would with a trellis on top of a table. It just kind of, instead of growing up, it's going to grow down. So yeah.
Excellent. Great ideas. Well, this is wonderful. This has been really great, Taryn. Thank you so much for that. If y'all have questions, please don't forget to email Taryn. I am going to pop her email up here in just a second. There it is. So please don't hesitate to email Taryn at tlanier@victoryteachingfarm.org. Any questions you have. Again, this whole episode was built because of, or created because viewers wanted to know about accessible gardening and had questions about balcony gardening and tabletop gardening. So, please, let us know your questions. Let us know what you want. Give us your tips and stuff. Taryn and I are both down here in Mobile. So if you have, tips for colder weather up in, Huntsville or somewhere like that, please let us know. We want to share all the information we can. And also remember, you can always go back and view this anytime on AARP Alabama's Facebook page or our YouTube channel. This is recorded, so you can come back and refer to it. And again, I'm going to put all of these slides in the comment section on the Facebook broadcast of this. So, and for next week, because we had to postpone for this week, next week, March 8th, we will be having our episode and get back on our regular schedule. But we are going to be talking about, and I just had it and I just lost it. We're going to be talking about how does your garden grow? Sorry, Taryn's on top of it. So tell us a little bit about next week's episode, Taryn.
So I think everybody, if you're a gardener, if you were on last week's episode, previous episode, we talked about getting our seeds ready and starting our transplants for our spring and summer gardens. So what we want to talk about next week is, how does your garden grow? What are some great tips to be successful with your garden from seed to plate? So we're going to start with those seeds, and we're going to check in on you guys and see how your seedlings are going. If you've started those already, if not, it's still not too late. And then we're just going to talk about over the course of, the next couple of months, the things that you need to be doing to take that seed straight to your plate.
Excellent, excellent. So, folks, just remember that's next Monday, March 8th at 10 o'clock on live on Facebook or YouTube on AARP Alabama's channel. We will have that posted up on our Facebook page in the next hour or so. So stay tuned for that. And if you have questions, come with your questions for next week. If you're working on your seeds and you have questions about stuff, let us know. We'll answer them. We'll answer them live at that time. So,
Yeah. Absolutely.
Again, thank you, Terrence, as always.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again next week. And have a great day, everybody.